it's so sexy to keep publishing more content, but at the end of the day, what really moves the needle is to revisit content that you published 6 months ago that is either dropped in rankings or didn't perform as you expected it right out the gate. If you're fine with having content on your site that doesn't have a goal and it's not intended to rank organically, that's fine. Build trust, give people what they came there for. Don't bury the answer in 1,000 words.
In today's episode, we're joined by Steven Schneider. Steven is the co-founder and CEO of Trio SEO. Before Trio SEO, he co-owned a portfolio of 40 blogs, managed 400 articles monthly, and scaled to 7 figures in annual revenue. At Trio SEO, Steven and his team create content strategies that speak directly to their clients' ideal customers and target topics that convert browsers into buyers. Join us today as we dive into the ins and outs of how, when, and where to use content effectively to help your overall SEO. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by FireUsMarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Hey, Eli. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm real excited about this episode. As we talked just briefly offline, my passion is SEO. I've owned a content company in the past, and I love content is a big part of SEO. And since we're doing this SEO series with a bunch of experts around the world, this is probably one of the ones that I've been looking forward to the most, just because I see your stuff on LinkedIn. I see what you've done in the past. I'm imagining you're gonna bring a lot to the table in this episode. So I'm real excited to dive in and get to know you a little bit more and learn from you. So before we do that, let's jump in and learn a little bit about who Steven is. So where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What do you want to be when you were little? Walk us through who Steven is.
Yeah. So I live just north of Seattle, about an hour north in Washington State. And I grew up wanting to be a writer. Funny enough, I was absorbed in books when I was really young. And I started writing a lot, like creative writing, and just had a natural kind of knack for that. And then I obviously kind of branched out into like middle school and high school, and that didn't stick. So it was very kind of obscure and random into how I kind of came to be. I didn't play sports growing up. It was in DECA, which is like our high school's business program. And I was really invested into that. So I was kind of like always on the business track and business oriented, and just kind of wanted to do something in life that was very entrepreneurial. I didn't even know what that meant, but I just kind of had this natural drift toward business, and just kind of like assumed life would take me where it needed to be.
Mm-hmm. Have you, did you ever have actual jobs that sort of taught you these skills, or have you always been in the entrepreneurial space?
I've always been in the entrepreneurial space post-college. I had a short-lived span between my last company and Trio, where I got like a real job, quote unquote, real job.
Yeah.
And it was just miserable. I hated it. I dreaded every second of it. And like my entire like identity was crushed. And I quit on the spot, no backup plan. And just kind of told my wife that I'd figure it out. Like I would rather work 80 hours a week figuring it out and starting over than work 40 hours a week doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I hear you. I think the reason I asked that is I've interviewed a few people in the past who have always been in the entrepreneurial space with maybe like a job here or there over the summer or whatever, but it's always interesting. I think what drives a lot of people to the entrepreneurial space is their hate for the typical 9-to-5 job, right? And they're like, I got to do something to get out, just like you did right there. But I also admire the people who have like grown up with it. And, besides your small little stint, you have pretty much been an entrepreneur this whole time. What do you do to like educate yourself and get the experiences of, the real job? Is it podcasts? Is it books? Like, is it mentors, leaders? What do you do to make sure you're still like well-rounded in that area that other people probably get through a job?
Yeah, I wish I could say I'm a big book guy. Now I'm not. Like I can't do it. And I know people cling to books, and I was like, I'm just not there yet. But I get a lot of my good information from LinkedIn. Like I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I know a lot of great SEOs on LinkedIn. And I'm not afraid to ask for help in that sense. Like if I was just talking to someone yesterday about, some technical SEO aspects, I'm like, I'm not a technical SEO guy, but
Mm-hmm.
if I need to learn something, like I know who to contact and be like, hey, can you teach me this one thing I want to master? And then they kind of like send me down the rabbit hole. Um, and I really just kind of believe more of a learn by doing aspect
Mm-hmm.
of things. So, you can read every book you want, read every article you want, but at the end of the day, like you got to get your hands dirty and,
Yeah.
kind of touch the stove to see if it's hot.
Yeah, you don't get into the analysis paralysis, right? You have to like actually take action
Yeah.
and get stuff done. So you wanted to be a writer when you were little. So that helps you understand like, formatting content, what sounds good, stuff like that. How else have you garnered the skills to become a good writer and build an agency like this?
I think it's just through a lot of luck. Like I, I wish I had a better answer for that, but like I feel like I'm a naturally lucky person, and I'm not
Uh-huh.
trying to like sound egotistical by any means if that comes off that way. But like I just have always had like a sixth sense about things and about who to talk to and making sure like if an opportunity is presented, like should I double down on this? And also knowing when to step away, like my other job. It was
Mm-hmm.
I quit my job on the spot. 2 months later, I met my business partners and we started Trio SEO. It was a very like good timing, right place sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I think it's just more or less about figuring out where the ball is moving and then trying to play chess to be in the position to receive the ball. And if I'm not, who can I lean on in that moment in time to kind of help support the process?
Nice. Sounds like you have a pretty good network around you of good people that are willing to help out.
Yeah. I try to keep my friends close.
Yeah, nice. What are you currently working on that excites you?
Trio, it's just Trio SEO is my baby right now. Just so invested in trying to make this the best SEO content agency out there.
Mm-hmm.
We've been working hard. We're coming up on the 1 year mark, and we've seen some incredible success for our clients and our own site. We're treating our own site as one of our own clients, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's been fun to build the team, to build the systems, and a lot of it is very similar to my previous company. And that's kind of why we were able to hit the ground running with so many systems and knowing the fundamental core pieces of how the business should operate was because I pretty much just duplicated the last one. So difference being is that instead of owning all those websites back in the day, they're just client facing roles now. So those were kind of like the major tweaks. So it's fun to have a new puzzle to solve and kind of just constantly problem solving all day. That's just what I kind of do and thrive on. So it's been fun.
Let's dive into the tactical stuff. I think that that's going to be the most exciting part of this podcast, and I want to learn from you. I know that everybody listening wants to learn from you. So at a high level, like how do you like somebody comes to you and says, hey, I need to improve my SEO, I need some content, like how do you create that strategy?
So it all starts with a discovery audit. We do a free discovery audit for anybody who's serious about their SEO and serious about services. It just pretty much gives us a good understanding on where the site is, domain authority wise, what their competitors look like, what they're currently ranking for, and what topics we can potentially see as like quick wins or low hanging fruit. And then we use that audit to kind of like segue to an actual strategy if that client signs. So it really just kind of helps us get like a TLDR on who they are as a company and if they can compete in general. So like that's step one. We've also, just kind of, we're really transparent if it's not a good fit. Like, if we have a domain rating 1 website and they're trying to compete in the finance space, it's like, sorry, like go build things for 10 years and come back and you can start working on content. So we try and just set expectations from the start, and content and SEO is a hard game. And so we just want to make sure that they're not kind of having any false hope from the start. And then from there on out, we really focus on bottom funnel content and content that will produce leads or drive high intent traffic to their site. I think we can all agree that SEO is just top of funnel meaningless traffic. It sucks. It's just like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So for that reason, we figure out, who their ICP is, what are their customers, where they live, what are they interested in, where are they in that buyer journey, and really just like master the product, the brand, the service, the customer, everything, and just be fully absorbed in it. And then create a content strategy that allows them to put them into nurture sequences, lead magnets, newsletters. It kind of depends on the brand and specifically how they capture that traffic and what they want to do with it. But yeah, we pretty much have a pretty turnkey system at this rate. It's great.
So if I'm a business owner sitting here listening, a lot of the reason I listen to this podcast is because I come to this tactical section. I can't afford an agency. I can't afford in-house. And I'm just here to learn. Help me understand a little bit more in depth. Like, I understand that your agency has this turnkey system, but help me understand like how I would do that on my own. Are there tools that I would look at? Do I look at competitors? Do I look at, maybe I am in an industry that's really competitive. How do I take an angle of like, maybe a siloed approach, a part of that industry? Help me understand more of like the how in this process.
Yeah, so I'd say like if you're kind of bootstrapping your SEO or you're just trying to do this on your own, the core fundamentals are like, is your site mobile optimized and is it fast? Like those are kind of like two things that are just absolutely non-negotiables. If your site looks like it was built in 1997 and your pictures are hanging off the edge, like you're not going to stand a chance. So just making sure that like it's actually up to date, make sure that it feels like you're in 2024 with your website. Yeah. And then when it comes to the content specifically, like I live in Ahrefs. I think it's a great tool. I think it's the best tool. A lot of people love SEMrush because the price is a lot better than Ahrefs, but there's some technical things that you can do with Ahrefs. So beginners definitely like to clean to SEMrush, and like I love that too. You can find some great gap analysis and look at competitors, like throw a URL in there and see what they're ranking for. Would it make sense for you to write an article about said topic, and how would you structure it? How would you differentiate yourself? How would you, take a look at that? I think that one of the common misconceptions from people who are starting out is that they're not doing enough competitor research. They're just kind of like throwing a dart against the wall with their eyes closed, hoping that it sticks. You're really going to take a look at what's ranking, what are the top 3 results, what's the top first result, what kind of content is that, what's the search intent behind it, and what sections are in that is obviously speaking to that customer, and Google likes it for some reason too. So aside from the authority aspect, the backlinks aspect, that content is serving a purpose and doing it well. So how can you mimic that and then level it up from there?
Okay, so you look at the competition, you put in some of your keywords, you look at the top 3 results, you go and when you say search intent, you're talking about like what is it educational? Is it a conversion friendly thing? Is it, do you have white paper, stuff like that? So look at that intent, and then go and try to model that same thing on your website, make it as good, if not better, than what those top 3 results do. Do you do any type of like keyword research beyond that to see like semantic keywords or what other keywords to add into it? And if so, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so the next phase from there on out would be to create a outline for your article or a brief. That's kind of like our bread and butter, and that's kind of what I feel like 10,000 outlines of this rate, so it's a pretty dialed in system. But for those starting out, you just got to kind of stick to the basics. Like, what is your H1 heading that goes on your back end of your website? What's the general structure? You should have an introduction paragraph. We always add a TLDR, or a too long didn't read summary, right after the introduction before you go further. And that just like summarizes the whole answer of what that topic is about. Build trust into that piece of content and give people what they came there for. Don't bury it and the answer in 1,000 words. And then from there on out, just build into the reader psychology and the flow of that topic. So if it's like, an article that's super dense, there probably should be some like stepping stones to get to the answer. If it's a informational, product-based article, maybe there's like how to choose this, or what aspects should I consider before buying, or are there any challenges I should consider before moving forward? So really try to create an atmosphere with your content that allows the reader to make an educated decision at the end of it, whether that decision is sign up for services, finance for a free trial, sign up for a newsletter, like whatever the goal is in that content, you should be able to look at that article or that piece of content on that page and say, do I feel like I have enough information at the end of this to move forward?
So I like that. I like that strategy, and I like the TLDR piece. Do you wrap any schema around that? Is the goal? I guess let me ask you this question. Maybe there's two pieces to it. Is the goal in doing that is to make it so that the article is scannable? You get your answer at the beginning, or is the goal, or is the goal to show up in the people also ask section of Google?
No, it's just strictly like get answer quickly, build trust.
Okay.
There's nothing I hate more than going to an article and having to scroll just to get the answer.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Google can snip a lot of it nowadays, but if it's something I'm like reading in depth or trying to study or learn about, like one of the things that people get wrong in SEO is the trying to create content for Google instead of realizing the fact that it's built for readers. Mm-hmm. And the more you create content for readers, the better it will react because Google knows that. So recipe articles, for example, just tell me how to bake the cake. Don't tell me how fun it was growing up at grandma's house and collecting the flour and rolling the dough. It's like, give me the recipe. Come on. Like, I don't have time for this. And I think that mentality can be applied to any topic. Like, regardless of whether people say, well, they're going to leave sooner, they're going to bounce. Like, who cares? Like, a majority of them will not. If it's a actual in-depth thing and that person is invested in that topic, they're going to realize that you have the answer, and then you push them to a more detailed, in-depth answer that allows them to grasp it in full detail. But if you're just burying the answer with all these BS sections that are built for Google, people are going to leave regardless. So you might as well give them the information, build that trust, and then claim that lead.
I've said this on a lot of podcasts in the past, and I think it resonates here with what you're saying too. If people don't know how to do SEO, if all they do is focus on user experience first, the majority of the SEO pieces will be taken care of. And I think you're saying that right here.
100%. Yeah. And then like the rest of it is just pure UX, like all the on-page stuff, user experience when it comes down to author bios and headings and images, and like making sure that when they are on that page, do you present yourself as the authority, and are you coming off with trust, and how is that flow? Are the lines spaced evenly? You don't want a wall of text built with an image. It's like these things that we take for granted when scrolling actually mean a lot in SEO, and Google knows, like they're smart enough to recognize that.
Do you have any strategy when it comes to like structuring the post or the article? Do you look at what the top 3 results in Google are doing, make sure that you're trying to get similar amount of headers or bullet points, or do you just kind of like make sure that all of the questions are answered the best that you can? Like, what's your strategy around that?
Yeah, so we use SEO Wind quite a bit. Great tool. And the reason we like SEO Wind is because it highlights the top SERPs or the top ranking pieces of content on Google, and will break it down just by headings. So like you can get a really quick snapshot. Like I can look at the top 3 results and just purely look at the headings and see, okay, they all have what is, they all have how to choose, they all have blah, blah, blah. So like those are going to be no-brainers. We have to add those too. I can also look at like the length. So kind of like what you're saying, like how long should this piece be? But also like to play devil's advocate, if a majority of the pieces of content are 3,000 words, but 2 of them are actually 1,000 words, well, that kind of tells me that you don't need 3,000 words to rank for this article. So everyone thinks you should be stuffing these sections to try to optimize for secondary keywords and semantics and all sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you can get your point across in less words, Google likes that, and so do readers. No one wants to read a 5,000 word article on how to bake a cake. So I think it's just really coming down to like being realistic with who's on the other end of this piece of content.
Yeah. What's your opinion on external links? So, and what I mean by that is not links coming into the website, but is there a certain amount of links that you should be linking out from your website to other links. Maybe that's not competition, is like WebMD or Wikipedia or something like that. Is that also important when considering writing content?
Yeah, we do 2 to 3, 2 to 3 per article. And that's just strictly for like educational resources and making sure that they're like authoritative external links. We're not going to link to a competitor. We're not going to link to a random blog.
Yeah.
It should be, like you said, WebMD, Statistica. Like we always try to include at least a couple stats, especially in the introduction. Usually like before CTA, something that shows proof of logistics, and just making sure that that's like an up-to-date case study or some sort of like actually research-based piece of information.
Okay, so that's interesting. So right off the bat, you have some statistics. You have a link proving that those statistics are valid. What are your thoughts on publishing frequency?
As much as possible without hindering quality.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, back in the day, like, you know, it was, and I guess, okay, I'll back up. As much as possible without hindering quality is very important. Quality is like top tier. There's so many people who are just using ChatGPT content to grow these sites and publishing 400 articles in a month, or publishing like pragmatic SEO and doing, you know, thousands of pages at once. I don't think those examples align with quality in my mind. You know, when we were at our peak and I was publishing 400 articles a month, that was across 30, 40 sites. If you do the average on that, it's still 10, 15 pieces of content per month. So if you can do 20 articles, like the max we'd ever do in a month back in the day was 30 pieces of content on a site per month. And that's like a lot of content. So yeah, as much as possible, because it helps your internal linking, builds your topical authority. You just have more keywords under your belt. More content's always going to be good for repurposing, depending on if you're on like a social media presence, if you have a newsletter presence, like more content's always going to be better.
So does that go for also like longevity? If you have a topic that is, you know, can, I mean, maybe only be covered in 100 blog posts total because it's just not that interesting. Do you have to say, okay, if I'm going to write content for the next 2 years, I got to divide that out and make sure I don't like, or is it okay to continue to write about the same thing over and over and over?
Definitely not. So I would say like you should only write content as if there's a keyword to target. I highly recommend against writing content just for the pure sake of having a blog on your site, unless it's more of a internal stakeholder asset. Like if you write a, you know, a white paper about your product and the sales team is using that, like by all means, that's a great piece of asset, like a great piece of content. But each blog that we create, and from a strategic standpoint, it should be tied to a keyword. Obviously, there's only so many bottom of funnel keywords to go after. There's only so many middle funnel. So at some point, you're just doing general brand awareness. And then after that happens, you're going back and updating internal links and strengthening the hubs and the spokes and the silos. So, I mean, it definitely has diminishing returns at a massive scale, but I don't think anyone who's, you know, look at like Healthline or WebMD, like they're never going to have a downside to having an article about something, even if it has 20 or like just having that presence online and that general awareness at scale. Like if you're that dominant is massively beneficial.
Calls to action. Where do you put those? How often do you put them? Do you put them in big buttons? Do you put them in just a link? Do you put them in a graphic? Talk me through that process.
Yeah, so we do call to actions at the introduction, the midpoint, and the conclusion. We try to ensure that the call to actions are aligned to existing service pages so that the internal link is either a optimized internal link from an anchor text perspective, or if it's going to be like a book a discovery call, get a free audit, like whatever that is, like that's more of like a, you know, it's a general thing wherever we place it. But yeah, because I think that, and I was just talking actually to our team about this the other day, is that with our personal site, like Trio, we treat it as a client. We have a bunch of content. We do steady content month over month. And now I'm in the process of going back and like improving the internal links and like doing all the call to actions and all sort of stuff. And we were having this discussion around when do you service page internal links versus CTAs? And someone on our team was like, well, wouldn't it make sense to include a CTA with a longer anchor text to draw attention to the link? And I said, well, I disagree, because if it's the top of funnel piece of content, which it was, the likeliness of someone landing on that page and actually clicking through to that CTA is few and far between. So I'd rather have an optimized internal link to a service page, and then that service page is actually going to see a bump over time. And if that increases its rankings, that's a way higher chance of landing a lead. So CTAs are it's a double-edged sword. Like, if you have a service page with intent, link that and just hope that service page ranks better. If it's like a bottom of funnel blog, like definitely include like a link to a discovery call or audit or whatever your primary function is.
Okay, so talking through top of funnel, bottom of funnel, middle of funnel, a lot of that has to do with optimizing the title of the blog or the article. How often do you use articles that are like who, what, when, where, and why versus something that's not a question, right? A lot of the things that people go to Google and type in is a question. So do you recommend always having some sort of question in the title, or do you mix it up with some other pieces of content?
We rarely add a question to the title because that's the majority of the time is top of funnel. So like if it's like, what is a blank, that's top of funnel. We're going after keywords that are way more like exact match parent terms. So, or like a versus term, something like that. Like that's bottom of funnel. So it'd be like brand A versus brand B, and then inserting client as option 3, and then have a full write-up on that. So you're still ranking for A versus B, and now you're providing an alternative as C, and why C is better than both of those combined. So, and the questions, like to your other point, was like, we wait for at least there to be enough data from Google Search Console. We don't want to just like post it and check 30 days and check back. I usually do like once a quarter. Like I'm just doing this right now on our own site, where I'm going to go back, look and see like what is getting impressions, like what has a high impression rate to a low click rate, and then can I bake in a lot of those keywords. With titles, what we typically do is we'll just do the primary keyword itself so that people know like, this is what I'm searching for, here's the answer. And then we do like a colon or semicolon, and then we'll do like a string of secondary keywords. So instead of it being like the traditional like ultimate guide 2024, like that's very 2017. I would do something like primary keyword. Think of it's like, we'll say like top 10 Amazon tools, colon, SEO, keyword research, analytics, and PPC. So that anybody who's in that string of events is going to find like, oh, I'm looking for PPC, Amazon tools, I'm going to go that way. Because all of the secondary keywords within that article have a chance to rank for that. So you're kind of like casting a wide net, optimizing the title to begin with. And then as you collect more Google Search Console data, you go back and refine it.
Do the majority of the content that you put out have the sort of those 3 steps, A, B, and then here's why C is best?
No, it's just usually for like versus articles. Like sometimes what we'll do is the content itself will just have a direct relation to the client, and then we're just like putting in a call to action to either like their services, their booking link, their newsletter, whatever their target is. Like for example, if it's like we have a mergers and acquisitions client, and it could be have an article about like how to sell XYZ company, or like what is my XYZ company valued at? Like people who are in that mindset are pretty close to being like, oh, I want to consider selling my company. So in that rate, we're just giving them the information that's probably more of like middle or bottom funnel, and then giving them the kind of like pitch to be like, hey, if you really are serious about this, like here's the offer.
What about, we mentioned how many links going out. Do you have a strategy on how many internal links? I know you said that even with your company, you're going through and redoing those internal links. Do you have a certain number that you look at, or just want to make sense, or what does that strategy look like?
Yeah, I usually tread on the less is more side of things, just to ensure that the links are actually concentrated to the links I want them to go to. We say like 3 to 5. That is kind of like a good sweet spot. But I'm not gonna like if I have a really good article that has like some pretty solid anchor text, like and it goes into like the 7, 8 territory, like I'm not gonna just be like, oh well, I hit my max. So I just try and make sure that like one does the anchor text make sense for the link, and two, is the link relevant to the person on who's reading the article. I think that's another kind of like misfire for most people when they're doing internal links. They just like stuff links in a page, and it's like if I have like I was just doing internal linking on like the keyword hub within SEO on our site, and it's like we shouldn't have anything internally linked except for keyword articles. Like it should have like the primary keyword blog, the secondary keyword, the transactional keyword. Like it should just be about keywords because they're in that mindset. And then our primary service internal link is our keyword research services page. Like hyper focused, very relevant, but also makes sense from like a SEO technical perspective.
So on that note too, we're kind of talking about structure with links. How else do you structure websites to make sure that they're very crawlable and have a good like architecture to them?
Easiest things are going to be like your navigation menu, your footers, having just like your heavy hitters in there. It's also one of those things where like you don't want to overload it. Like I just like actually removed a bunch of stuff from ours the other day because I want it to be more concentrated. I don't want to just like spread our like homepage equity thin. So like doing that sort of stuff. Internal linking is massive. Like I can't preach enough about the importance of good internal linking. Good alt text. Like I have so many times I've like had a new client come on and they're just like, we have these images, but we have no alt text. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Like, I guess here we go. It doesn't like have to be like super optimized, like stuffed alt text. It just should have something. Like anything's better than nothing. What else? Like good EAT metrics for your blog, like author bios. Those are really easy to add. Like ours, like I'm the author for all of our stuff, and it's like links to my LinkedIn, shows that I'm a real person, not this like a AI bot writing this content. When was the published date? When was the last updated? Like table of contents, TLDR, like all that sort of easy stuff. Site stuff, I would say like more technical stuff is like robots, text files, making sure that like Google's not crawling pages that shouldn't and wasting your crawl budget. Those are like, that's a pretty big impact thing you can do. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many, like, I mean, SEO is like one of a million things you can do, but yeah.
SEO is not hard, but there's so much to it that it's not like it is like you really look at these people who have been into it for, 10 plus years. And if they've really done their homework over the 10 years, it's hard to compare that to somebody who's just starting, who took a class that talked about the top 3 things or whatever, right? Like, what would you say to a company that has, and I've seen this in the past, clients come in and we look at their analytics and we look at their search console. What do you say to a company that has increasing impressions, it's going up, but the clicks are just flat? They're not following the impressions. What advice would you have for them?
The first thing I would look at is like the title. I think that's kind of like low hanging fruit. It's like, how is your title? Does it stand out? I mean, I think that it's so easy for titles to become camouflaged nowadays. Like you don't even like, you think you have this catchy title and it's like, there's no variation on Google. Like you have the same exact title for the top 3 titles. And then like, how can you like, have like parentheses in your title or, something like catchy. So that's like the first thing I would say. The next thing is like, what is your introduction? Like we spend so much time on intros because that's your hook. I mean, like if you have a bad hook or it feels like it's off or it feels like it's AI, just what's going on there. And then one is like, can you optimize your site further for like people also ask, can you like build in anything that'll allow it to gain extra real estate on that? Maybe get extra click through, people also ask. It is a hard one. It's definitely one of like you master that in SEO, you have the holy grail. So let me know if you figured it out.
I have some clients that have it and we're doing some tests and they're basically things that you've said. There's a lot of the Obviously, the stuff on the Google side, the title, the meta, all of that. Doing some internal linking testing with that as well. If I figure it out, I'll let you know though for sure. What are along those same lines? What are some common mistakes that clients make when they're writing content? I'm sure you obviously you get their website, you do that analysis. What are some common things that you see people doing that is just killing their website?
The problem is that I've seen is that typically if a client has some content on their website, it's very, very good content because they are the expert. Like they know their business better than anyone. So like how it's written is actually like better than we could probably do it. Um, the problem is it's not optimized and they don't think about the experience. So like we had a client recently who has a lot of content, but there's no targeted approach to the content. So it's like, okay, how do we repurpose this? How can we take it and apply an update to actually go after a keyword? And when someone get there, like what's the experience? And so like they have, like the page width of the page might be like 1400 pixels wide. And it's like, I'm not going to scan. I don't want to turn my head when I'm reading a blog.
Yeah,
Like it should be like narrow,
yeah,
or it could be a wall of text. Like, they're writing like it's like a 5 paragraph essay. It's like every sentence or two line break. And you might have to edit it to actually make sure that the thoughts are cohesive every 1 to 2 line break. But people online don't read like they're reading a research paper. The other thing too is like images, like going back to people who just don't have images in their content, where the benefit of images is not to sell or not to build brand awareness, but it breaks up the reader's flow and allows them to focus on sections and allows them to skim, and also just like it's easier on the eyes. Like if you're reading and reading and reading and reading, like you're burnt out, you're gonna leave, you're forgetting what you're doing. So I think that we have to remember that reading digitally is a lot different than reading a book. Like I can sit there and read a book forever, but at the same time, like if I'm scrolling, like screen time, different. Um, and also just like goes back to the intent or the goal of that. It's like, they could have a great piece of content, but if there's no action in it and they're just giving an informational piece, it's like, it's kind of a dead end for them. Like there should always be a segue for that reader to do something, whether it's even read another piece of content that's now the bottom of funnel action oriented content, or newsletter, book recall, whatever. You never want a dead end on a website ever.
Do you have any recommendations on different types of optimization for content outside of like blog posts? So like if for example, I write blog posts for each webinar that I do or each podcast that I do, is there a different way to optimize those, or is it a very similar strategy?
So like, yeah, I'll use service pages as an example. I would say like, because we write a lot of service pages and like, it's obviously a whole different beast compared to a blog, like a sales page. And so from that sense, like, you really want to bake in like, what's the problem that is currently out there? What's the solution? That's usually the service that the client has. Where's the differentiator in the gap of the market? How do we meet that? It should really kind of be focused more about the copy and how it's presented. It's written completely different than a blog. And I think it comes to other pieces of content too. The biggest thing is just knowing that if you're fine with having content on your site that doesn't have a goal, and it's not intended to rank organically, that's fine. Like I said, going back to like sales teams, like they need content to send to clients. Like we have stuff on our site too where it's not supposed to rank, but it's just there so that we can forward it over to a potential lead.
What's your? I think we're on the same page with AI content, but let's dive in a little bit and talk about AI content, or how to use AI to create content. Because a lot of these business owners and even up and coming marketers, I think they make the mistake of just going to ChatGPT and saying, "Write me a 1,200 word blog post about X," and then they copy and paste it. And I see that all the time on client sites coming in. Is there a way to use AI to do some of the work and then humanize it? Or are you of the opinion of like AI is just long term not going to be around? Like, what are your thoughts and opinions on how to use AI?
Yeah, I'll start by saying I'm pro AI if it's used as a tool. I'm anti AI if it's used as a solution or a replacement to write content. I think it should be used as like a extension of yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we we have I mean, we're 100% AI or 100% AI, 100% human written agency. So like,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a very strict, like if we get caught, writer turns in something, we catch it once, it's like, you're done. Like it's
Yeah.
very clear expectation from the start. We use it to help edit like Grammarly, but like that's not going to move the needle from like a AI detection standpoint. Like everything is still 100% human edited from our team.
Right.
So I think that if people are looking to cut corners and go that route, by all means, to each their own. Like, just don't be surprised if like bad things happen. I think that if you're willing to go with a high risk, high reward solution to your strategy, like it is high risk. So, but yeah, I mean, I love ChatGPT. I love like the AI revolution. I think that it's here to stay. I think that it's only going to get better. It's only going to get smarter, more advanced. I also think it's going to become way more ingrained into just how we live life. I mean, the iPhone, like people now have like iPhone fingers because they have dents in their fingers. It's like that whole mindset of this thing that we thought, or like even credit cards, like, in the 50s, people were like, I'm not going to use a plastic thing to pay for anything. And it's like, now people just have Apple Pay and they tap their phone. So anybody who looks at AI and thinks that it's not here to stay, it's like, okay, well, have fun being left in the dust when we're all riding around our hoverboards communicating. So
absolutely. No, I mean, so not to mention like the new ChatGPT search that's coming out. I know Google's had a monopoly for a long time, and I don't know if you heard. I think it was actually just today that they're like gonna make them like split it up into. I don't know all the details, but I think split it up into like 3 different sections. They're not allowed to be like Apple's default browser anymore. There's a handful of things that are going to go into that, right? So with Google being attacked in that regard, ChatGPT coming out with their own search, TikTok being used as a search engine from all of these younger kids more so than some of these other search engines like Google and YouTube in the past. I do think that AI is going to be around for a long time. And people should understand how to use it and be okay with it, right? But not use it to do what's the wording you use? Use it as a tool, but not as the solution.
Yeah,
that's quality advice right there. Do you guys use it as a tool in your company right now to like help lay out or do homework or stuff like that, and then you have humans actually do the content writing?
Yeah, so like we use it for like, editing. I said like Grammarly is huge. I use that in emails. I mean, obviously too, just like
for sure.
Why not? Other thing is like brand briefs. Like if we're working with a new client and we need to figure out like tones, ICPs, just more information about who they are, like what are their offerings, like all that sort of stuff. The difference being there is 1, it's not published, and 2, we send the brand briefs to the clients to review. So like we're still editing in it, and the client has the ultimate say on the brief before we give it to writers. And that's kind of like our way to save time, produce higher quality, get them looped in. It's like this win-win-win solution to that. And then like I use it all the time for like spreadsheets. I think that's another like huge thing that people forget it can do is like take a screenshot of some spreadsheet I'm working in and like give me a formula to do this, and it's just like 3 seconds later gives me the best formula ever. Like that's where I get a lot of like my use out of it.
Yeah, I use it for like coding websites and stuff. Hey, I need this button to do this and have the hover look like that.
Yeah, like no follow these links and change the color. It's like great.
Yeah. My wife's adopted it quite a bit, and I love some of the ways she uses it. There's some GPTs out there that are like coloring book GPTs, and she'll go in and prompt something, and then she'll get this picture and she'll print it out for my kids. Another area that she uses it, we're in a very politically heated time in our world right now, and so she's going through and doing her homework and investigations on like policies, but policies are 100 pages long, right? And so she'll use AI to like condense it, summarize it, and then even at times write a letter to the senator or the mayor or whatever, which is pretty awesome, right? Instead of reading 111 pages, condenses it. Here are thoughts on it, and so lots of different ways to use AI. What other advice do you have? Am I missing anything? We've gone over pretty in detail a lot of content, but what other advice do you have for these listeners on how to optimize their SEO using content?
Let's see here. I think I would say that like the biggest thing when it comes to optimizing your content is to revisit it more than you think. One, apply updates. Look to see how you can update your content, refresh it every 6 to 12 months, depending on the type of content or how it's performing. It's so sexy to keep publishing more content, but at the end of the day, what really moves the needle is to revisit content that you published 6 months ago that is either dropped in rankings or didn't perform as you expected it right out the gate, and see how you can freshen it and see how you can kind of like move it forward. I don't think there's enough discussion around the importance of updates to optimize it, whether it's a homepage, your service pages, your blogs, hell, even like your contact page. Like if people are trying to contact you and you have a crappy contact page, like chances are they're not going to want to move forward. So think about like older stuff before you just hammer it on new.
Yeah, not to mention you should test your contact page and make sure it works out.
Yeah,
right?
like if I'm not getting an email from a contact page, like something's wrong.
Yeah, I've actually had 2 new clients come on over the last 2 months where we've just gone and tested. We've gone and like subscribed to their newsletter and we've gone to their contact page. And it turns out that their contact page was completely broken for like a whole month. And you go look at the analytics and they're getting a ton of traffic. But then as soon as that's fixed, all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, we're getting our leads, we're getting contacts. And so
that's like the best case scenario for you guys though. That's like an easy win. And you're like, look how much money we just made you.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So, and I think one of the topics we're going to talk about in this SEO series is content decay. And so exactly what you're talking about is going back and looking at that data in Search Console, looking at the data in analytics and looking at that content. And I really think it is low hanging fruit. It's content that has been around for a long time and Google loves age, right? But going through and updating it. And I've had clients do this also in the past where they'll go and they'll rewrite it so much that it's almost a different article with a few of the same paragraphs. They'll change the title, they'll change the URL, they'll redirect the old one to the new one, and it all of a sudden like spikes in ranking, but it's 10 years old, right? And so I think you're spot on with that advice, going back and looking at the content that currently exists and seeing what you can do to make it better, especially if you're in an industry where things change a lot and get it updated, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Steven, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on and enlighten us today. We've gone over quite a bit in detail, so I'm hoping that people will take this and internalize it for their own companies and figure out how to make their content better and improve their SEO with all these tactics that you brought up today. But again, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on today and enlighten us with your knowledge.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eli. This is a blast.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah. And anyone else who's listening, we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.